There are noises here on the outside. Okay. We wanted to finish up yesterday our discussion about carbon shlomim, to be mashlim the four categories of zvachim, of zvachim. So we have number one, shlomim applies to the case of a yachid in 99 out of 100 cases of shlomim. The only exception, which is called Shalmei Tzibur, will be Kivsei Atzeres on Chag HaShavuos. Now, the status of Shlomim, again, 99 cases out of 100, is that of Kodshim Kalin, which means it could be eaten anywhere in the city and even by non-Kohanim, anywhere in the city of Yerushalayim. And Kivsei Atzeres has the status of Kodshei Kodshim, which means that the basar is eaten lekohanim and it needs nisachim. Now, we had another discussion about all these categories. We want to know if it's bab and adava b'neder. As far as we're concerned, shlomim is like any other carbon with the exception of chatas and asham. It's similar to ola, and it's bab b'neder u b'nedava. Now, as far as a carbon chova is concerned, then we have the case of a chovas tzibur in shlomim with regard to kivsei atzeres of Chag HaShavuos. He says here that there's a chova of shlomim b'yachid. He doesn't tell you exactly what cases are included. But, we can talk about that as we go along. Perhaps we could talk about Nazir. Maybe we have to see the status of Lachmei Toda, of a carbon Toda, excuse me. Now, what would be a case of a neder with regard to carbon shlomim? So he says, Harei olai shlomim. He has not designated a specific animal as a carbon shlomim. And as we've discussed, in a case of a neder, he has no achrayus. I'm sorry, in a case of a neder, he has achrayus, which means that if after he took the neder, harei olai, he designated a certain specific animal as a carbon shlomim, if that animal gets lost, it becomes tomei, then he's got to replace it. However, in the case of an adava, he said, Harei zu, not harei olai, but he specified an animal as a carbon nidava. In that case, he has no achrayus. In event that this animal gets lost, cannot be brought on the mizbeach for whatever reason, he's exonerated from any obligation, doesn't have to replace it. What's the case of a chovas yachid? He says, Bailus kol yachid liros lifnei Hashem birgolim. I think it's instead of Bailus, ba'olos, when he goes up. I think that's how you have to conjugate it. When any yachid goes up to the Beis Hamikdash during the regel, then he has to be makriv, what's called shalmei chagig. On the first day of Yontif, he's obligated in a carbon shlomim. So we have now a case of a chovas yachid. He doesn't talk about a nazir. And what would be a case of chovas tzibur? That's only on Chag HaShavuos, together with the shtei alechem. They bring kivsei atzeres, and that's a carbon shlomim. But as we said before, it's a carbon shlomim with unique halachas because it has the status of kodshei kodshim, unlike any other shlomim, and therefore the bailim cannot eat the basar. Only the kohen gets to eat the basar, and it has to be eaten within the azor. It cannot be taken outside of the azor. Now, a carbon totem. Now, what's the status of a carbon totem? Obviously, it's not an ola, it's not a chatos, it's not an osham. So some say that it's a carbon shlom. Obviously, by process of elimination, it has to fall under the category of shlom. Now, what happened? There are four categories of people who, if they experience a redemption, a salvation, they have to bring a carbon toda. And that's because we consider their salvation as almost miraculous, but it's certainly a result of divine intervention, divine providence. And to express their thanks, their gratitude to Hashem, they bring a carbon toda, toda milashon hoda. Now he quotes a Shita Mekubetzes in Mesechta Menachos. Eino chayav lahavi el roy linadev carbon toda. Very strange. Honestly, I don't know what to make out of this. I was always trained to believe that a carbon toda, in the case of our Batzri Moses, is a carbon chova. He's quoting a Shita Mekubetzes in Mesechta Menachos to the effect that a carbon toda is eno chayav lahavi. It's only roy linidava. I don't know. That's a pellet. Asi also kishlamim. But here's where a carbon toda differentiates itself from any classic carbon toda, any classic carbon shlamim, in that it has to be accompanied by 40 lachamim, the lachmi toda. And yesh mishakasim she'ena ba b'nedava l'michlo nasalo nes. Oh, I see what's going on. Just 1 second. Yesh mishakasim she'ena ba b'nedava. Fine. So maybe now we can go back to the Shita Mekubetzes. Maybe what the Shita Mekubetzes means is that if I experience some sort of a I don't know what word to use. I don't want to use the word salvation, but something that I feel a profound sense of gratitude to Hashem, I can volunteer to bring a carbon toda, even though I don't fit into the four categories. So if I fit into the four categories, we'll call that salvation from a ness. Then I'm obligated in a carbon toda. The Shita Mekubetzes is saying that if I'm not in one of those four categories, nevertheless, I can opt voluntarily to obligate myself to bring a carbon toda. And at the end of this paragraph, the Rashash is saying, no, if you fit into the four categories, you'll bring a carbon toda. But if you don't, it's neina bub and a dove. You don't have the option of voluntarily bringing a carbon toda. It's eno bub and a dove. That's according to Rashash. But if I understand correctly, the Shita Mekubetzes says that it is bub and a dove. He's not denying that if you fit into one of these four categories, then it's a carbon chova. He's just adding a fifth column, so to speak, meaning that he could voluntarily bring a carbon toda, even though he's not one of the four arba tzricha lahodas. Okay, now we have other karbanos that seem to belong to the expanded category of shlomim. It's not what you call a carbon shlomim per se, but they have certain common dinim with shlomim. And those are the following three categories. That's Bechor, Maser, and Pesach. What makes them similar to shlomim? because they are Kodshim Kalim. For example, Pesach. Anybody could eat a korban Pesach, and it could be eaten anywhere in Yerushalayim. Obviously, Betum or Betara, but and the same is true of Bechar and Maser. Bechar means the firstborn of a kosher animal, and Maser means you have 10 animals, and every 10 animals you have to be mafresh one for Maser Behemon, has to be brought on the Mizbeach. However, here are some of the nuances of differences here. Habachar, a mur of muktar b'sar nechal kohanim, a maser mur b'kam b'sar nechal b'aylam, a pesach mur b'kam b'sar nechal b'minuyim. Like any kodshim kalim, the maser behema, is eaten by the bailam. In the case of Pesach, likewise, like any kodshim kalim, the korban is eaten by the bailam, but we require that he be manu. He's got to sign up on the chabura on the group. Then we have the case of bechar. Bechar is very strange because a bechar is called kodshim kalim, but yet its basar is nechal l'kohen. So in what sense is bechar classified as kodshim kalim? And my impression is, I hope I'm not misleading anyone here, is that it could be eaten anywhere in Yerushalayim. Otherwise, what makes the bechar into kodshim kalim? When he's saying that b'saro nechal l'kohen. Now, it could be that we have to do more research on bechar. Let's see. Now, it could be that by classifying Bechar, Pesach, and Maser as Kodshim Kalim, it means we're exempt from what's called Nisachim. That's where we should put the emphasis. Because in the case of Shalmei Atzeres, of Kivsei Atzeres on Shavuos, there is halacha of Nisachim. And that's true also for a korban olah. Bechar ketza behemet tahor shel chulin shebichra v'yolda zachar tamim makrivin osel korban maser ketza bechol shana mafresh me'eder behemet hatahoris echad me'asara v'hi anikris maser and pesach makrivin v'yom arbasa b'nisan korban pesach v'oklan osel v'leil chamish asar b'nisan. Okay, now we get to the different categories and species of animals. He calls it suge, habehemos, veha-ophos. Now we have 5 different minim. And these 5 different minim include all of behemos and ophos. As far as behemos are concerned, we're going to subdivide them into 3 categories. As far as ophos, into 2 categories. What are the 3 categories of animals? We've got bakar, kvasim, and izim. Now, what's included under bakar? We'll take them one by one. What's included under kvasim and what's included under izim? So we have what's called Gedolim and Ktanim in all these 3 categories. Okay, so let's see if we can get this down. In the case of Gedolim, of Bakar, we have a par and a par. A par, otherwise known as a shar, is a male, and a para is a female. What are Gedolim? Gedolim means that they are 2 years old and up. Sherim mibnei shnatayim, hainu mitchilas shana shniya, ad bnei shalosh. And bnei shalosh means ad sof shana shlishis. So from the time they become 2 until the end of their 3rd year, when they become 4, once the para has its 4th birthday, happy birthday para, it is no longer kosher b'toras bakar lemizbeach. Now, when is the earliest date that a par or a para is kosher lemizbeach? So that's the beginning of its 2nd year until the end of its 3rd year. So if I'm not mistaken here, we have a 2-year span of a gadol. Now, if a person takes upon themselves a neder to bring a par, they would have to bring a par that fits into that age bracket between the beginning of the 2nd year and the end of the 3rd year. Now we talk about Ketana. In the case of Zohar, it's called an egel, a male young calf is called an egel. In the case of an akeva, it's called an eglah. So when is a bakar, meaning an egel or an egel, when are they considered young enough to be brought on the mizbeach? That is toch shnasam harishon, during that 1st year. Now, what I don't know is what's the difference between a katan and a gadol. I mean, the gadol we said is mitchila shana shniya, and the katan is during shana rishona. Why is it so important to know whether it's a katan or a gadol? Are these just names and categories, or there's an afkamina between the two? I don't know. Okay, so that's as far as bakar. Now we move on to kvasim. And kvasim could also be called by a synonymous term, tzom. Dolim. So if it's a zachar, it's called an ayil. And that's, again, from the beginning of its 2nd year. Mishikones b'shnaso hashniya. And what does it mean that it has to enter into its 2nd year? Shloshim v'echad yom. Now I understand. Right? A katan is toch shnasa rishona, and a gadol is tchila shana shniya, but a month into shana shniya. So during that month, after it celebrates its 1st birthday, it's neither here nor there. It's not a keves, nor is it an ayil. I think, at least in the case of kvasim, I understand the difference between a katan and a gadol.
Or cotton is there.
Okay. But what's the din of a gadol? When does a bakar, a par or a para, When does it become a gadol? In Tchila Shana Shniya. Do you have to wait 30 days or not? He tells you to look in the Lechem Mishnah at the beginning of Maisa Karbonos. And he says, Istapku imnase par miyad b'shnos hashniya or rak liachar shloshim yom. Mobi ayel. Tells you to look in the Minchas Chinuch. So apparently we touched on a very, very controversial topic as to whether or not in the case of Bakar, do we have to wait 30 days into the second year to be called a gadol? But it seems like with regard to Kfosim, there was never a doubt about that. And the gadol, which is an ayil, has to be 30 days after its first birthday, to the end of its second birth. Oh, just 1 second. Ad sof. Oh, this is important. Ad sof shnoso hashniya. Oh, I missed that. So you're talking about an 11-month period. Whereas in Bakar, we said it was until the end of the third year, which gives it basically a 2-year period of time. Here we have a window of 11 months. Now, let's talk about the Ayil's first birthday before the 30 days. So that was the window that we said it's neither a katan nor a gadol. He calls it a palgos. Okay, you gave it a name, but what's its status? That's what I'd love to know. Nichnas shno hashniya, v'adayin lo overlet shloshim yom, eno nikra lo keves v'lo ayil, v'u nikra palgos. Ubenekeva rochen. No, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Palgos. I don't know what the status of a palgos is. I just know it's a name. Nekeva. Now we're talking about kvasim nekeva. Is called rochen. Not ayil, but rochen. And in the case of the nekeva, it seems that the rochel is at the beginning of the first year. Of the second year after the first birthday. It doesn't seem to require that extra 30 days. So therefore, there's no parallel of a palgos in a nekeva. Now, what about ktanim? In the case of a male keves, it's called se kvosim or gidi. In the case of the nekeva, it's called a kavsa, and it's during the first year. So it seems to me that a kavsa, after its first birthday, becomes a rochel. And it remains a rochel until the end of its second year. So it gets a full 12-month period as a rochel, and for the first year, it has a full 12-month period, minus the first 8 days, as a kavsa. In the case of a male, then during its first year, it's called a se kvasim or gedi. After its first year, it becomes a palgos for 1 month, and then after that month, it becomes an ayil. And once again, this applies until the end of its second year. So we're only talking about like a 1 year period of time, or a little bit less than that. Mashen Kane and Bakar, we spoke about a 2 year window of time. Now we get to Izim. Now, what I'm a little bit confused about in the case of Izim is that we mentioned before a Gedi, and a Gedi belongs to the Kvasim category. Not exactly sure why that's so. So min ha'izim mikra gabishem tzon. Oh, so the word tzon can refer not only to kvasim but also to izim. It's a general term. Hagdolim zachar sa'ir nekeva se'ira huishikones l'shnasam hashniya. Again, you don't seem to require the 30-day waiting period. At sof shona shniya. Anim zachar se'ir izim. So before we just talked about se'ir, but if it's se'ir izim, then we're talking about the first year. And then in the cave, it's se'iras izim, and that's during the first year. It's interesting, he doesn't mention the 8-day period of time. That's not his discussion here. Maybe we'll come to it later on. Now we get to the 2 categories of birds. We have Torim and we have Bnei Yonah. Well, if I remember in English, it's called a dove and a turtle dove. I always forget which is which. I think Torim are doves and Bnei Yonah are turtle doves. Not that I can promise you I know the difference between them. Anyway. So Torim, Veina Kevos, Bein Zcharim Ksherim, Shalonemar Zachrus El Bebehema, Rak Hagdolim Ksherim, Avalo Aktanim, Gdolim Hainu Mitche Yiz Ha Hivu, Hainu Shiyu Kanfe Gufam Gdolim, Va'adumim, Umazhivim Kizahav. But Hoyu B'tchilas Hatzihuv Psulim, Lefishalo Yigiu Adaim Lichlal Gdolim. So we don't accept Torim Ketanim. There is no such category in Kodshim, in Ophos. We need Gdolim, and based on the color of the wings, we'll be able to determine whether its royal is bad, whether it's Gdolim red. We need something called Yaz Hebrew. They become golden in color. They become like reddish in color. The wings. And we have to wait till it's really, really, the color is really a profound color. It's a dark color of Zahav or Adumim. Not enough that it's Tchilas Hatziyuv. Tchilas Hatziyuv is not enough. We need one of those Sfarim. They have pictures of all the different animals. I wonder if it's in the Gemara's Vachim. Steve, you want to do me a big favor? Take a look at my Gemara's Vachim. See if there are any colored pages there. They have colored pages of the animals. Last but not least, we have the Bnei Yonah. And once again, it doesn't matter whether it's a Zach and a Keva. But here, we have the exact opposite of Torim. Whereas Torim, we have to wait till it becomes Gdolim. In the case of Bnei Yonah, Dafka Ksherim, Ketanim Ksherim. We'll have to define what that means. It's probably at the very beginning of the book, if it exists at all. Are there any pictures of animals there? Or it's only like pictures of the Kodshim? No. It's only the Kodshim. And I can't check my menachos because I gave it back already. Anything in the back of the safe? I doubt it. No. No. So Bnei Yonah, oh, you have something? Picture's worth 1,000 words. Oh, let's see. Of course, they're not going to give you the English words for it, but so this is a par, otherwise known as a shor. This is an egel, that's a male young calf, and then there's a para, which is the female cow. Son, we have a seir or a seira, and then he has a gedi, which I don't know, I thought a gedi was a young goat. I'm not 100% sure that that's so, because he calls a ketanim seir izin. I don't know. Then we have an ayil, that's a male. Its female counterpart is called a rochel. Then we have kvasim, a fleh, or a seh. And then we have a yonah and a tor. I think the yonah is the turtle dove, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I have to look that up. English. Be something. Okay, then, so let's make a note of, oh, we had just finished that last line over here. What does it mean that Bnei Yonah are ktanim? Kolzman she'oker knaf u'mismale mokom ikro dam. Okay, so it means that it's an immature bird, and the immaturity is in the fact that it's not able to really pick up its wings. When it picks up its wings, then it bleeds. It's not mature enough. Okay, then, so this is where we got up to here, and we'll pick that up tomorrow. There's Hashem. Back there later, and we will